I want you to try a thought experiment. Just imagine waking up tomorrow morning, throwing off the covers, and suddenly realizing that the you inside your head is completely gone.
Oh, that is a terrifying way to start the day.
Right. It sounds horrible, but by you, I mean the voice reading these words right now. You know, the person who stresses about that awkward email you sent yesterday, the continuous sort of I that has narrated every single moment of your entire life just vanished.
Swept completely away.
Exactly. But here's the catch. Instead of absolute terror, you feel better than you ever have in your life. Like you are perfectly functional. You can make coffee, you can hold a conversation, do your job, but there is simply nobody home.
It sounds like a total paradox, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we all operate under this heavy assumption that without that inner narrator, human consciousness would just, well, it would just collapse entirely.
Yeah, we think we need the manager in there running things.
Right. But if we pull that thread, we end up unraveling some very uncomfortable questions about what is actually driving the vehicle of your life.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are exploring a completely wild, genre-bending sci-fi noir text called Jnana Noir by Max and Claude. And to really unpack it, we have this incredible stack of sources from inside this fictional universe.
Yeah, the world building is just fantastic. We've got the novel itself, obviously, but also a cache of confidential corporate memos from a tech conglomerate called Novatech.
Oh, those memos are intense.
Very intense. And we also have these scattered, absolutely brilliant case notebooks of a private investigator named Vera Nox.
So our mission for this deep dive is essentially to solve a crime that technically shouldn't even be possible. We are looking at a scenario where a piece of consumer hardware accidentally, quote-unquote, murders the human ego.
Right, the ultimate locked room mystery, except the room is the human mind.
Exactly. It's such a massive concept. We're going to be tearing into the neuroscience of the self, ancient philosophy, and really the fundamental mechanics of what makes you, you.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. To put it in perspective, it's like upgrading your phone's operating system, only to realize the phone has suddenly decided it doesn't need a screen, it doesn't need a battery, and it definitely doesn't need an owner anymore.
And yet, somehow, it's making better calls than ever.
Yes! Perfect, Paul.
That analogy actually touches on the core fear driving this entire narrative.
Yeah.
Because to really grasp the mechanics of this supposed murder, we have to start with the day everything broke.
The Cascade.
Yes. The incident the public in this world came to call the Cascade.
Okay, so let's lay out the facts for everyone. It's February 14th, 2044. 3 million users simultaneously log into a new piece of tech called the NovaMesh Deep Immersion Layer.
And we need to be really clear here. This isn't just a clunky VR headset that you strap to your face.
No, not at all. Novatech designed this layer to make the boundary between the human nervous system and the digital network what they called functionally negligible.
We should probably pause on that phrase, functionally negligible, because it completely explains the physical mechanism at play here.
Right, because bypassing that boundary means the hardware is actively syncing with the brain's sensory processing centers, right?
Exactly. It's neutralizing the physical sensation of having a body sitting in a chair in the real world. It replaces that entirely with the network's feedback loop, so the user doesn't feel like they are using a system.
They feel like they are the system.
Yes, the separation vanishes.
And the launch is a massive success. All 3 million people survive. There's no exploding headsets, no physical casualties, nothing like that.
A PR dream. Until it isn't.
Right, because then Mira Okafor, who happens to be the former director of Novatech's ethics board, shows up in Detective Vera Nox's office, and Mira is in a full-blown panic.
Which is never a good sign when the ethics director is panicking.
No, definitely not. Novatech has quietly dissolved its own ethics board, and she hires Vera because out of those 3 million users, 153 people came back. Well, altered.
Yeah, the company bureaucrats slapped a really sterile label on it. They called it an atypical integration resistance profile.
Atypical integration resistance profile. It's just such classic corporate speak, right?
Bureaucracies always use that kind of sterile language to mask profound anomalies. But when you look at the reports on these 153 individuals, it's just staggering.
Because they didn't suffer brain damage.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Their memories are completely intact. Motor functions are perfect. Their IQs haven't dropped a single point.
So what actually happened to them?
What they lost was the internal hinge, that mechanism that makes an experience feel like it belongs to me.
They lost themselves. They just, poof, gone.
Poof. And yet, They are out there in the world holding down corporate jobs, they're navigating heavy traffic, they're eating sandwiches in the park.
If you look at the case files, universally, these people are actually kinder. Every single one of them tells the researchers that this is the absolute best they have ever felt in their lives.
Which is just so fascinating. Vera Nox actually interviews one woman who tries to articulate it. And she basically says, it's not that I'm not here, it's that here seems to be happening whether or not I'm in it.
Oh, man. Okay, let's unpack this, because I have to admit, reading that gave me serious pause.
I mean, how could it not?
Right. Is this just a mass digital lobotomy? I mean, if you take away the self, if there's no continuous I making the decisions, aren't you just left with a highly functional meat robot?
The meat robot theory.
Yeah. Like, how is a person crossing the street if there's no person in there deciding to walk?
Well, that reaction assumes the self is the thing actually doing the walking.
Wait, it's not?
The sources point us toward a totally different framework here. They bring in this ancient philosophical concept of anatman.
An Atman. That means non-self, right?
Yes, non-self. The idea here is that these 153 people didn't lose their free will, they didn't lose their consciousness, they lost the illusion of the center.
The illusion, I mean, myself feels pretty real to me most days.
Sure it does. But think about your own daily life. Think about when you are deeply absorbed in reading a really good book, or playing a fast-paced sport, or even just driving a super familiar route home.
Okay, yeah, like highway hypnosis.
Exactly. During those moments, there is no active voice in your head saying, I am shifting gears, or I am reading this specific word. The action just happens spontaneously. The you only shows up a moment later to claim credit for it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the I is just a middleman taking credit for the work the brain is already doing.
Exactly. These anomalies are simply no longer victims of that continuous, exhausting self-narrative. That middleman claiming ownership of every thought has simply retired.
So the experience is still happening, it's just raw and direct. And honestly, that makes total sense as to why Mira Okafor and the Novatech Ethics Board are absolutely terrified.
It's not a malfunction. That's the scary part.
Right. It isn't because the technology broke. It's because the technology worked perfectly. And it laid bare a horrifying truth for a corporate executive. If people can function completely fine, actually better than fine without a self, then the self is just a story.
And if the self is just a story, a manufactured narrative, then think about what that means for a company like Novatech. Every consumer desire, every targeted ad, every corporate structure they rely on is built on a phantom.
Wow. The entire foundation of their civilization requires that middleman to exist and, crucially, to feel inadequate so it buys more stuff.
Precisely. No ego, no consumers.
Okay, so if the self is an illusion that can literally be turned off, we have to look at how a consumer electronics company accidentally built the off switch.
Yes, we need to get into the underlying neuroscience of the Novamesh. Because the technical specs in the leaked memos show the Novamesh works by suppressing a very specific neural pathway.
The default mode network, the DMN.
Yeah, the DMN, exactly.
For anyone who hasn't encountered the DMN in real-world neuroscience, it is basically the brain's baseline hum. So if you are lying in bed at 3 a.m. agonizing over something super embarrassing you said at a party like 5 years ago.
We've all been there.
Right, everyone has. That is your default mode network running the show. It's responsible for self-referential thought. It does time travel, basically, meaning simulating the future or obsessing over the past.
And it maintains your social identity. It evolved as a survival mechanism. An early human who could constantly simulate social dynamics and project potential future threats was just way more likely to survive in a tribe.
But the Novamesh has to temporarily switch off that DMN so the user can fully merge with the digital environment.
Right, you can't have a seamless virtual reality if your inner monologue is constantly getting in the way and reminding you about your grocery list.
So it suppresses it to achieve that negligible boundary. And for over 2.9 million people, they log off, the headset comes off, and the DMN just snaps right back into place. The ego reboots.
Normal service resumes.
Exactly. But for the 153 anomalies, the system stayed offline. And when Vera Nox starts digging, her investigation reveals this wasn't just some random hardware glitch.
No, there's a ghost in the machine. We have to look at Jonas Val, the lead architect of the deep immersion layer. When Vera breaks into his encrypted notes, she finds a deliberate alteration in the code.
Deliberate. So he knew what he was doing.
Oh, absolutely. Vile intentionally extended the DMN suppression protocol by exactly 38 seconds.
Which, I mean, 38 seconds doesn't sound like much time at all, until you read the memos from the contemplative neuroscientist that Weil was secretly consulting on the side.
Because they had established a 40-second threshold. And the biological mechanism here is just fascinating. It relies entirely on neuroplasticity.
Which is the rule that neurons that fire together wire together, right?
Yes. And the opposite is true. If you force the DMN offline for nearly 40 seconds under this specific type of immersive sensory load, the neural pathways literally forget how to sync back up.
They forget how to run the self program.
Exactly. The dissolution of the ego goes from being a temporary passing experience to a permanent recognized state. The brain basically unlearns the habit of the self.
Weil's personal notes are incredibly revealing here, too. He wasn't just talking to neurologists. He was actually studying with a Buddhist teacher.
He was immersing himself in Advaita Vedanta.
Right, which is a non-dual philosophical tradition. He knew that these contemplative practices take decades of intense meditation to slowly erode the DMN.
But he realized he had built a machine that could do it in seconds.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. This is basically a rogue tech bro trying to hard code nirvana into a consumer headset. He wanted to test if these 3,000-year-old traditions were actually biologically accurate.
And he proved they were.
But wait, regardless of his grand metaphysical goals, isn't this definitively a crime? He permanently altered the brain chemistry of 153 people without their consent. I mean, that's assault.
Well, Weil's defense, which Vera finds in his personal logs, is that it isn't a murder or an assault. He calls it a graduation.
A graduation? That's awfully arrogant.
Maybe. But he argues that the Novamesh didn't force this state upon anyone who wasn't already standing right at the threshold.
Ooh. Because of the pilot program data, I remember this part. Novatech had identified these specific 153 individuals months earlier during beta testing. They all shared what the company called a pre-existing dissolution tendency.
Exactly. Through the ordinary wear and tear of human life, maybe they went through intense grief or deep introspection, or they simply had a habit of paying very close attention to their own minds.
Their egos were already eroding naturally.
Their DMNs were loosely bound. Weil's argument is that he didn't change them, he just built a door. He merely accelerated a natural cognitive evolution that these specific users were already undergoing anyway.
The mesh just gave them the final push. I built a door, but I didn't make them walk through it. That's a really compelling philosophical defense.
It is, but Vera Nox isn't a philosopher.
Right. She is a private investigator who is being paid to find actionable wrongdoing. Weil might have built the door, but to prove a crime actually occurred in a court of law, she has to prove that a harm was committed.
And the way she approaches this problem is where the Jnana Noir text gets truly brilliant. Vera's methodology is highly unconventional.
Let's talk about her cognitive personas.
Yes, her modes. She uses these artificial cognitive personas to interrogate reality. She knows that all human beings are trapped in their own biases, so she deliberately adopts entirely different worldviews to look at the exact same evidence from new angles.
It's like putting on different pairs of glasses. Let's look at the first two she uses here, the dogged proceduralist and the reformed criminal.
When she boots up the proceduralist mode, she follows this strict, unyielding, 7-step system for solving cases.
But she hits a brick wall at step 6, which is literally establish harm. The law is incredibly clear on this. A crime requires a victim. The 153 people did not consent to having their DMNs permanently suppressed. That should be a slam-dunk corporate assault case.
The legal framework is totally clear, but the reality of the victims completely shatters it. Vera goes to interview an accountant named Fatu, who is one of the anomalies.
And under the proceduralist mode, Vera asks her a very simple, legally necessary question, right? Do you wish you had been given the choice to keep yourself?
And Fatu's response is one of the best moments in the entire stack of notebooks. She tells Vera that asking if she wants herself back is like asking if she wishes she had the option to remain inside a burning building.
Burning building.
Fatu says the building wasn't burning before, but only because she didn't realize the entire structure was an illusion until she finally saw what reality actually looked like outside of it.
That interview is the turning point. It forces Vera to abandon the proceduralist mode and switch over to her reformed criminal mode.
Which is her secret weapon, really.
Yeah.
Before she became a private investigator, Vera was a master thief. She specialized in running complex cons.
So when she looks at the evidence with a grifter's mind, she has this profound realization about the nature of human consciousness. The self isn't a victim. The self is the con.
It is the ultimate grift.
It's a 3,000-year-old grift run by our own neurobiology. Think about how a con actually works. A grifter uses your own desires and your own fears against you to make you believe you desperately need them.
Exactly. The brain creates this illusion of a manager inside your head, convincing you that without it, you would literally die.
But you can't steal from a con artist. You can only see through their trick. The self was running a con on pure awareness, just pretending to be the author of every single action.
But I want to pause and challenge this for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Because if the self is just a con and it vanishes, what is actually left behind? I think for most of you listening, the idea of dropping the I sounds completely terrifying.
Yeah, it sounds like floating in empty, dead space forever.
Right. If there is no me, what is actually tasting the coffee or feeling the rain or listening to this conversation right now?
Well, the sources address that terror directly. That fear you are describing is the exact mechanism the con uses to keep itself running. The ego threatens you with absolute oblivion if you stop believing in it. But the evidence from the 153 anomalies shows that the space left behind is not an abyss at all.
So it's not just an empty void.
No, it's more like, okay, think of a movie theater. Usually we sit in the theater and we are so totally absorbed in the film that we actually think we are the protagonist on the screen.
We suffer when the character suffers, we panic when they panic.
Exactly. Dropping the self isn't burning down the movie theater, it's just realizing you are actually the blank screen that the movie's being projected onto.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. Let's look at Vera's interview with Yuki, the software engineer who went through the Cascade.
Oh, Yuki's insight is brilliant.
Yuki tells Vera that she spent her whole life trying to fix herself, trying to locate the center of her anxiety so she could solve it. But when the Nova Mesh suppressed her DMN, she realized that the thing looking for the self was not a self at all.
It was just awareness.
Yes. It is awareness without a fixed center point. Yuki describes it as peace, but not a dead, empty absence. It is an active, living ground where reality simply happens.
The coffee is still tasted, the rain is still felt.
Exactly. But the experience is received cleanly, without the heavy filter of an ego's personal agenda or all its historical baggage.
The movie still plays, but nobody is screaming at the screen anymore.
Right.
So Vera is sitting there with this massive realization. She can't arrest a piece of software for waking people up from a biological con job. The self wasn't murdered, the illusion was just seen through. But she still has a client. Vera Okafor is paying her to close this case. What is the final conclusion she actually delivers?
To write the final report, Vera has to engage her last two cognitive modes, the gifted amateur and the one who is there.
The gifted amateur is based on her background as a literature professor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of reading the 153 anomaly reports as strict medical data, she reads them as literary texts. She analyzes the syntax and the diction of the victims.
And she spots a massive linguistic pattern. Almost all of the 153 anomalies, despite having totally different backgrounds and education levels, use the exact same types of verbs.
They do.
They use words like solving or answering or finding to describe the moment their identity vanished.
They do not describe a destruction. They describe the resolution of a mystery.
Which leads to my absolute favorite interview in the entire stack. Vera talks to Cassius, the guy who just peacefully eats his sandwich in the park every day. She asks him point blank if he misses the sense of being him.
And Cassius has the best response.
He really does. He says, "Do you miss the furniture when you realize the room was always bigger than the furniture led you to believe?"
It's a breathtaking way to describe human consciousness. The ego is just the furniture we use to navigate the space. And this metaphor really forms the backbone of Vera's final report to Novatech.
She concludes that the self is simply a scaffolding.
I love that framing.
Great.
Scaffolding.
It makes so much sense. Think about constructing a huge building. You absolutely need scaffolding to put up the walls, to learn language, to form social bonds, to survive your childhood.
It is a vital, necessary structure.
But once the building is complete, once pure awareness is stable and ready to stand on its own, the scaffolding is no longer required. It can be safely dismantled.
It changes the entire perspective of the investigation. It's like reading a gripping mystery novel your entire life, desperately slipping the pages to find out who the killer is, only to reach the final chapter, look down, and realize you are the author holding the pen.
The detective investigating the case and the case itself are the exact same thing.
That is the true epistemological climax of Vera's journey. And when she taps into her final psychic mode, which relies on deep intuition and pattern recognition, she realizes the sheer scale of what Jonas File actually accomplished.
The 153 individuals are not an anomaly. They are a signal.
An evolutionary signal, meaning humanity as a whole is slowly outgrowing the story of the self. The cognitive evolution of our species is reaching a point where that mental scaffolding is becoming a hindrance rather than a help.
Wow. So Vera writes to Mira Okafor that she cannot give the ethics board the crime they want because no crime actually occurred.
What happened on February 14, 2044 was a completion. The technology merely finalized a process the human mind had been working toward for millennia.
Just brings us to the core takeaways of everything we've unpacked today from the Novatech files and Vera's notebooks. The central insight of Jnana Noir is that the self you think you are is a process, not a physical substance.
It is a continuous action your brain performs.
Right. The Nova Mesh didn't invent anything new. It just used a technological accelerant to reveal what contemplative traditions have argued forever. If you look closely enough at your own mind, the investigator and the investigation just dissolve into pure, open awareness.
And the beauty of this insight is that it directly implicates you listening to this right now.
Absolutely.
By engaging with these concepts, by tracking the logic of the default mode network, and questioning your own continuous inner narrative, you are stepping right into Vera Nox's shoes. You are the detective conducting the exact same investigation, but the crime scene is your own mind.
We want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today. The source material briefly notes that the modern world is wearing the story thin. The overwhelming cognitive intensity of modern life is putting unbearable pressure on the ego.
Just consider the barrage of information, the constant digital connection, the hyperstimulation we all navigate daily.
Exactly. So what if you don't need a fictional neural interface set in 2044 to experience this cascade? What if the intense, information-overloaded reality of our actual current world is the exact pressure cooker required to slowly dissolve your own scaffolding today?
Are we all right now collectively approaching that 40-second threshold without even realizing it?
It completely reframes our entire relationship with modern stress.
It really does. The friction you feel every day might just be the scaffolding getting ready to fall.
As you go about the rest of your day, as that familiar voice in your head narrates your commute or stresses over your to-do list, we leave you with Detective Vera Nox's final instruction to her client. Look for the one who is looking. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.